Welcome back to another Stenosis SlogCast. Episode 4 now. Figure this song is fitting given what we're going to talk about today. Gonna take it back to the beginning in a way. Talk about a few things that have been on my mind. So let's go. How are you? Hope you're doing well, wherever you are and whatever you're doing. I wanted to talk about a few things that have been on my mind. I've been thinking a lot about them. Lately, I've had this sense of, I don't know what you'd call it, a lack or loss of direction, I guess you could say. It's been strange. I've been thinking, about what I do with Stenosis, and things have changed. I mean, they have since I was recording Scream Therapy. I remember some of the songs that were on Scream Therapy I had started recording back in 2008. Stenosis didn't actually start until, I'm trying to think of the year here. I think it was, what year is this? 2017? I think it was 2013. Yeah. Or 2012, 2013. Around there. It was 2012. Either way. That's whenever Stenosis started, but some of the songs that were on Scream Therapy were recorded as early as 2008. I wrote Somewhere for Me to Go, or SWFMTG. That's the shorthand version. I've actually had a number of people ask me what that means on Scream Therapy. What is SWM, or all those letters and capitals? What do they mean? It means somewhere for me to go. Shorthand. I didn't want to type it all out on an album sheet, so I decided to abbreviate it. But I wrote that in 7th grade. A lot of emotional times then, but I guess everybody goes through emotional times in 7th grade, and then you grow up and you realize how irrelevant they are. Isn't that how life is in general? You go through, whenever you're in elementary school, you think you have a grasp on the world. You kind of know everything. You know what's going on. You're ahead of the curve there. And then you get into middle school, and bullying starts becoming more prevalent. And that's whenever people really start to separate into their little cliques. You have the athletes, and you have the nerds, and you have the people who don't really fit in, and then you have the people who it's just commonplace to make fun of this group over here. And then you get into high school, and that stuff just kind of compounds. It layers on top of itself. And some of the people go between the cliques a little bit. Some of the nerds become some of the football MVPs just because as they grew into high school, they realized they a different talent in sports or something along those lines. But it kind of stays the same. And then you graduate high school, and your friends that you have in high school, you tell yourselves, we're gonna keep talking forever. We're best friends. We've spent most of our lives together. And at least this was my experience. I went to a very small school, in a tiny little town. But your friends and you think you're gonna talk forever. You're gonna go into adulthood and you're gonna be free. You're liberated from high school. You're liberated from your parents. And move the microphone. There we go. You're liberated from your parents and from high school, and you're gonna be free. You can go out and you can move out and you can get yourself an apartment or rent a house or something with your friends. You go to college, maybe rack up a bunch of debt there just to not have a job or something in the future. And you realize that adulthood is very different than what you thought it was in high school. Once responsibilities show up, bills, or transferring the electric in your name, you don't really think about that stuff in high school. And then as the years go on, you realize how many of the people in high school that you were best friends with, that you were going to talk to forever, inseparable you were. Next thing you know, you haven't talked to them in a year, and then 2, and then 3. And then you realize that whenever you do talk to them, so much has changed. And you've grown into 2 different people that no longer know each other. And now if you talk, it's just pleasantries and, hey, how you doing? No, things are good, yeah. And you go about your way. You don't really sit down into actual conversation like you thought you were going to. And more often than not, you just return to all the stuff that happened in high school, the memories that you shared together, which are completely irrelevant to your then present. That's a long-winded way of saying, I've been thinking about Stenosis and what I do, what I've been doing, and how things have changed, in my head and with how I approach things and just all around how it's different than it was whenever I was writing Scream Therapy, or even whenever I released Scream Therapy. I miss having that artistic freedom of not thinking about Instagram, not thinking about Twitter. I don't really think about Twitter anyway, because whenever I post on Twitter, it might just be me, but if I post on Twitter, I think I could be talking to a brick wall, and that's about as much reaction as I would get. I don't know. Some people say that Twitter isn't dead. I would disagree. I mean, you can send messages. It's kind of like a glorified messaging platform now, but as far as publicly posting, it doesn't seem like it goes very far. But I was recording Scream Therapy, and I listened back to it, and I like Scream Therapy. It's not my best work, but none of my releases are my best work. I never want them to be, because if they are, then there's no point in recording again. But I spent a lot of time on Scream Therapy, and I was listening to a lot of different bands and music that I haven't listened to in a while. I was listening to a lot more Breaking Benjamin and 3 Days Grace, and I listened to a lot of Godsmack, and people relate my voice or the songs. Oh, it sounds like Godsmack, or you sound like Sully. I never intended that to happen, and I wrongfully got annoyed of those statements, because at first I was thinking, well, somebody's just comparing me to something that is way bigger than what I am, and I just want to be known for my art and for what I do. And watching the interview with Billy Corgan on the Joe Rogan Experience opened my eyes to a lot, because he said he was bitter for years about the whole, hey, you're the rat in a cage guy, and about how, well, do you not even know the stuff that I've done, the countless other songs I've written and recorded? Why is it that people attach to one thing? And he said the older that he got, the more he appreciated it, that he could stop by any off-ramp, pretty much, in the United States, and find somebody that would have some connection or knowledge about the work that he has done in some way, shape, or form. And to him, that's paramount. He didn't think about that before. And I had to disconnect myself from my, I don't know what you'd call it, but my just wanting to be, listen to it for me and who I am, and I don't want to sound like Godsmack. I didn't try to sound like Godsmack. Why do you keep referring to Godsmack? And then the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it was a major compliment to be spoken in the same breath as Godsmack or Sully, or to have somebody say that your music sounds like that and it's as good as that. Or, there were people who said that my music to them sounded like Godsmack, but better. That's huge. That's a compliment. And the older I get, the more I appreciate that stuff. And the reason why I'm playing The Epic Way of Dying in this is because I grew to hate this song. I really did. And it might be a shocker. It might not be. I don't know. But I grew to hate this song because it was all that people talked about. Kind of like the rat in the cage with Billy. It was all that people talked about. Nobody talked about Dust or Retrospect, which Retrospect didn't have any lyrics. So, less people probably connected with it. But it just seemed like everybody, their only focus was on The Epic Way of Dying. And I grew a little bitter about that. But now I appreciate it more. I still wish that people would show the rest of the music or the other albums just the amount of patience in listening that they did The Epic Way of Dying. But in no way does that discount my appreciation for how many people really enjoy this song. And it's given me a new appreciation for it over the years. I don't know what makes it special. I don't know exactly why people gravitate towards it. I've thought about it before. As a songwriter, that's kind of your job. You have to analyze what people like and why they like it. If you write a song and people don't listen to it, or people, you show it to them and then, that's good, and you can tell that they're just humoring you, you have to ask yourself why. You have to think, okay, what is it that they're not liking? And it's not always that it's a bad song. It's not always that you have written something that is inferior to anything else. It might simply be that because somebody is familiar with you. Like if you show your friends and family something, typically your friends and family are yes people. They say, oh, that's really good. But along with that, even though your friends and family are yes people, and this is one reason why I started Stenosis without telling anybody, is because the people who know you and the people who become familiar with you, more often than not, will not continue to embrace your work. It might sound counterproductive, but it's very true. The more people you become familiar with and the more people who feel that they relate to you on an equal level, the less they will appreciate the work you put out. And it's not all-inclusive. I've said that before. It's not all-inclusive. Nothing is all-inclusive. Everything has exceptions. There are friends of mine who do know about Stenosis. There are people who know who I am and who I am, if that makes any sense. They know who I am outside of Stenosis, and they know about Stenosis and what I do there. And of the, I'm trying to think of how many people know. Probably, I would say it's anywhere between 5 and 7. Maybe not even that many. But out of them, 2, I believe, actually listen to the stuff that I do. And out of them, only one of them is like ahead of the content like everybody else is, who does not know who I am. Or who do not know, who does not, whatever. And so it's not always that the songs are bad. It's is sometimes that people are just, they're familiar with you, so they don't appreciate your art. You know, if you were, if you think about it, like James Hetfield's kids, there was an interview with James Hetfield. I don't know where I watched it, and he said it in multiple places. They have asked him, you know, do your kids like your music, or do they, you know, what do they think of you? And James Hetfield goes on to talk about how his kids don't give a shit who he is. To them, he's just dad. They still don't listen to him, and they still argue with him, and they still, you know, if he plays Metallica, they don't think it's cool. I mean, that's a huge thing. You know, if you think about it, if you had James Hetfield as a dad, you would probably think, oh my God, that would be so cool. But in all reality, if you had James Hetfield as a dad, then you would just have James Hetfield as a dad. You wouldn't have you wouldn't have first and foremost the James Hetfield that the world knows as your dad. You would have, you know, James Hetfield, your father, that is at home and tells you what to do and sits on the couch and eats pizza and stuff as your dad. And then you would think, okay, dad just goes to work. And the rest of the world views James Hetfield differently than his children do, or his wife does. And there is something to be said about that and creativity. I created Stenosis because I figured if it was good, if I wrote music that was good, and if Stenosis was something, because for years I tried to form bands, I tried to get people together, and I tried to move this music thing forward. I've always wanted to do music as my career, as my life, always. And ever since I was a little kid, my mom has pictures of me whenever I was, you know, younger than 5, holding a plastic guitar. I was just asked in the Stenosis Facebook group, which you should join if you're not a member of it. You can, if you're listening to this on the website at stenosismusic.net, under the Facebook tab, I believe is the Stenosis group. Either way, you can find it on Facebook. But I was asked when I started playing drums and guitar and etc. And I started drumming whenever I was 3 years old. I started playing guitar whenever I was 5. I don't know when I started singing, but I've been singing my entire life. My mom says I started singing at an extremely early age, so more than likely it was at a point which I don't even remember. And music has always been what I've wanted to do, always. I was a drummer in a band in middle school and high school. Whenever I was in elementary school, I was in 6th grade, and I was the first kid to be the elementary, middle school, and high school drummer. Not necessarily because it was a tiny school. I mean, there was multiple drummers available, but it was just I devoted all my attention towards music, so realistically I could play better than everybody else because everybody else was more focused on basketball and not practicing drums, so they were off. And whenever they played the songs, they didn't know the transitions, and I did, because I was the kid who would go into the band room after school and just sit there and play the drums, or I would go home and I had a drum set there and I would just play the drums, or I'd play guitar. Music is everything in my head. Everything. And that has led me to really think about the current status of what I'm doing with Stenosis. Because lately I've had a difference in view with Stenosis. I was thinking, it used to be that I would sing every day, damn near. And whenever I say sing, I don't mean I would hop in the truck and go ride around and sing songs. You know, sing to the steering wheel, which I do that too. But what I mean is, if you've seen the pictures I post on Instagram, it plug that too, at Stenosis Music. If you don't follow me there, then go there. I have big speakers in my studio. I've always had big speakers. I do not record and mix on regular studio monitors because I prefer my system to be a one all-inclusive system. And whenever I play music, I crank that shit up. And I have my microphone, and it runs through my mixer and my power amp, and I guess you could say I just perform to the walls in a way. And I did that as a kid. and it was my release. I love doing that. I love singing and just playing loud music and singing in here in my studio. It's an entirely different world. It allows me to escape. And I haven't done that regularly in probably 3 years. And it's something I think about often, because I couldn't go without it before. And now it seems like I don't have time for it. And that's for multiple reasons. I mean, there are things that I do, and there are aspects of my life that you guys don't know about. Music is not the only thing that I do. It's the only job that I do. But it's not the only responsibility I have in my life. So it's not like I wake up and all that I have to do is Stenosis stuff. Stenosis stuff takes up all of my time that is set outside of my other responsibilities that I have to take care of. So it is hard. And whenever I think about playing music anymore, or singing, and just singing in my studio, I think about how, to me now, it seems like a waste of time. Because I've busted my ass to build Stenosis. And now it seems like for me, I struggle to always try to get content out, try to do Instagram, try to do the Facebook group, try to do the Discord thing, which I completely fucking failed on that. And I put a post in there too in the Discord server. If you haven't heard of Discord, I don't even know how to explain it, but it's more primarily for gamers. And I have to keep up on, so Instagram, the Facebook page, now the Facebook group, which I prefer the Facebook group over it all, because more people use Facebook, and Facebook doesn't limit the exposure of a group like it does a page. If I post in the Facebook page, Facebook will only show 3% of the people who like my page that post, unless I pay Facebook. And then they'll actually show the 400 people, or not actually even the whole 400, but if I put $50 into a promoting a post, then it'll get it'll be seen by, I don't know, 200 or 300. But there's 400 people who like that page, and whenever I post something on the page, Facebook will only show it to 3% of those people, unless I give them money, and I fucking hate that. It's like, if somebody likes my page, then just show them my shit. So I prefer the Facebook group. And then the Twitter thing, which I don't post on Twitter because I feel like it's an entire waste of time. And then researching what can I do that will be better, and what kind of videos can I make that people will like, that I will also enjoy creating. What kind of gear can I get to simplify my process? And one day, actually, I don't know, I don't want to say one day. I feel like every time anybody says one day, then that shit never happens. But I will go through and explain what I used to record before, as to opposed to what I have now. And I'm sitting here looking at my rack equipment, and I have a Universal Audio LA610 that I used on Rot, which I wasn't familiar with it, and I just threw it right into Rot. So, some of the sonic qualities of Rot I'm not happy with. And then I got more familiar with it, and I used it for the Notion album. And then I also have some ART. I have an ART Pro MPA2 and an ART Pro VLA2, which is a dual mic pre and a dual compressor, 2 rack setups there, which I need to replace the tubes in those. I found out that the little LED light that displays the meter, that died like 2 weeks after I got it, and I figured, hell with it, signal still passes through, I don't really want to deal with the warranty shit. And then I found out if you run a bass guitar through that thing, it likes to destroy the tubes. So, I don't know, I have to figure that out. I haven't used those in a while. I used the compressor for the bass, because I run 2 bass tracks before. Now, moving into the future, I always like to change my recording setup every time I record a new album, because I'm afraid of recording the same album again. That's why my tunings have changed. Scream Therapy was in drop C. Rot was in drop B. There might have been one song on there that was in drop C, or I don't know. I'm pretty sure it was all in drop B. And then the Notion album was in drop A, but some people call it drop A standard, which is not entirely accurate. But it's drop A 7-string standard, which is A and then standard tuning of a 6-string. So the standard drop tuning of a 7-string guitar is A and EADGBE, because EADGBE is the standard tuning for a 6-string guitar. That's whenever somebody says, what do you tune to, or if you hear a song and somebody says, this song it was recorded in standard. Standard is E, EADGBE. And so I only have 6-string guitars. I don't know how to play a 7-string. I've tried, and it sounds like shit. And so I took my 6-string guitars, and I tuned 2 of them down to A, EADG, B. So only had 6 strings. I just eliminated the high E version that a 7-string would have. Anyway, that's what I recorded the Notion album with. And I don't know, anymore I think about, I stress more about music. Whenever I was recording Scream Therapy, music wasn't what I did full time. And so I think there was less stress there. And whenever my mind changed to, this is what I do every day, this is what I do to bring in money, then over the last couple and a half years, my approach or stance, maybe, I don't know, whatever word you want to use, has changed a lot, where my appreciation for the creativity and my drive to do it has really gone down. And I think that's because I work so hard and I forget to enjoy what I'm doing. I'm always thinking about, well, not always, but more so, I think about, okay, what effect will this have? How will this help me grow? How will I get more subscribers with this? How will I get more followers? Or if I post on Instagram, how am I going to get more followers on there? Which, I fucking hate Instagram in the way that 99% I've found. Okay, we'll say 95, whatever. Instagram is such a fake ass platform because it's such a one-way serving platform for most of the people on there. Most of the people on there, they won't reply to your shit. They don't care if you comment. They only want themselves to be in the spotlight. And the problem with society or with Instagram, stuff like this, is everybody wants to be on the stage. And now that everybody's on the stage, nobody is in the crowd. So that's led to a huge gap. In me personally, I fucking hate it whenever I comment something thoughtful on an Instagram post and the person doesn't even respond. And if I have ever done that to you, let me know. If I have ever not responded to a comment that you have left or a message that you have sent me, let me know, because I never want to be that guy. I unfollow people all the time. As a matter of fact, today there's a YouTuber. I found her because she I'm getting tongue-tied. I found her because she interviewed Sean Morgan of Seether, and I thought it was a great interview. It was. You could tell that she was not a professional media person. So the interview was laid back. It wasn't as strict and structured as you would typically find with somebody who's been doing it forever. And I was like, this is really cool, and she seems nice. So I followed her on Twitter. I wanted to support what she was doing, and I subscribed to her YouTube channel. And I commented on her video on there, and she replied, which that was nice. And I was like, oh, this is a nice person. And I would comment on her stuff on Twitter whenever I'd be thumbing through it. Nothing. No reply, no nothing. She never followed me back on Twitter. And she didn't subscribe to the Stenosis YouTube channel. She has 189 subscribers on YouTube. I unsubscribed and I stopped following her on Twitter just because I fucking hate the mentality of a person being too good, regardless of their stature. A person being too good for the people who follow them. I fucking hate it. And there for a while, I even started to step into those waters. And I'm ashamed of that. Because, part of my mind was thinking, well, the more I talk to people, the less they're going to like my stuff. And I even trialed that a few times, and I found it was true. It was kind of a catch-22, because the more I talked to people and the more I grounded with them and related to them and became, just a humble person talking to them, the less they liked my stuff, the less they shared it, the less they listened to what I was doing, because then I was nothing but just another person to them. I was no longer the Stenosis that they wanted to talk to or that they were hyped to talk to. And then I was like, okay, I saw the numbers going down as I started being humble with people. I wasn't special anymore. I was just another guy. And then I stopped talking to people and the numbers kind of went back up. And then there was this point where I wasn't talking to people. And I'm sure people had the approach that I have where, well, fuck this guy. If he thinks he's better than everybody else, and I'm not going to follow him. So then I saw the numbers going down again. So it's this thing you cannot win, really. And I have found that I sleep better at night knowing that I'm a decent person to people. So that's the approach I am taking now, and that's the approach I will continue to take in the future. I'm never too good for anybody. And I'll never be better than anybody. I will always admit that my mixes aren't perfect, or that my songs aren't perfect, or whatnot. And if somebody asks me for help, I'll help them. I just gave somebody advice the other day. I don't sit there and arrogantly charge them or anything. Somebody asked me how, what would I suggest to make their mix better, and I told them. And then they said that my suggestion was perfect for them, or that it worked, and it was what they were looking for, and that made me feel good. Because I've asked people for mix help in the future. In the future, yeah, I've asked people in the future. No, in the past, I've asked people for help before I was ever doing anything, and I either got the "I'm too fucking good for you" approach, or just no response at all. Or like there's a YouTuber that a lot of people watch. His name is Ryan Bruce, and I used to like him, but whenever I think of him now, I think about whenever I asked him for mix advice in a Facebook message, and I was just humbly looking for advice. This was, I don't know, probably 4 years ago. I was looking for a little advice, and I was new to recording, or newish, and I kind of had the whole thing. He had a bunch of followers on YouTube, and I'd never done YouTube before, and he responded to my message, and I was like, "Ooh, Ryan Bruce, he's talking to me." And I asked him a question about my mix, and his message back was to put a high pass filter at 20 kilohertz. And at the time, I didn't think about reading what he said. I was just thinking, he's talking to me. And then later I realized that was a shit fucking response. Because if you're into recording, or you know anything about recording, a high pass filter cuts out any frequency below it, or at a ratio, and it lets more high end frequencies pass. Well, the highest frequency that a human being can hear is 20 kilohertz. So if you put a high pass filter at 20 kilohertz, you won't hear anything. Your audio's gone, because you have cut out all the frequencies that you can hear. And that sits in my mind, And I will always remember that. I'll always remember the time that I humbly reached out to somebody and asked for help, and then they gave me an answer that was bullshit, that they were fucking with me, and that they knew wouldn't help me. And it was a complete and total waste of time. And it was part of that, to me, I'm better than you approach. Like, I'm just going to, give you some fucking satirical answer and blow you off. And I hate that. I hate people who think that they are better than other people like that. You just may as well not respond. And don't fuck with me like that. And tell me that this will, if I'm asking how can I make my mixes better, and your response is to, cut out all the frequencies of the music. That's bullshit. And so I don't take that approach. I really don't. If somebody asks me for help, then I will give my honest opinion, because I know what it's like to be given the shitty opinion. And that's kind of the way I approach everything in life. I know what it's like to be stepped on. And so I don't step on anybody. I know what it's like to be fucked over. I don't fuck over people. And I read a thing, I don't know where the fuck it was, maybe it was on Facebook or something, but it said that some of the nicest people in life, which there are people who will argue if I'm nice or not. Most will say I'm an asshole because I don't care. But it said something along the lines of some of the nicest people in life are the ones who have met, are the ones who have met the most evil. And maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but I know for me, the more shit I've been through in life, the more appreciative I've come to be. And I don't tell anybody how to do anything anymore. For example, the person who asked me about their mix and what my advice would be, I didn't say, you should do this, this is what you should do, change this and whatnot. I said that they could, put like a bus compressor on the master bus and see if that does anything. And then I wrapped it all up with, none of what I say is law, but maybe what I said will get them into a place in the road that will point them in the direction they want to go. Because nothing of what I said did I expect, nor tell them this is what the end-all be-all is. I gave my advice with the intent of it might give them a new place to find where they're wanting to go. If they put a bus compressor on there and they listen to it and they're like, no, it doesn't really sound the way I want it to, but they do hear a difference, and so it opens up their mind of, oh, okay, well, actually, instead of doing what he said, I'm going to do this, and then they find what they're looking for. Then that's excellent. I would love for that to happen. If what I say works and it helps the person, then that's great too. If what I suggest is the result that they want, then I'm extremely happy and grateful to have been given that opportunity as well. But with Stenosis, with me and within my own thing, the more I've approached it as a business, the more I've approached it as something that I needed to do to make money, the less I've embraced the way I used to embrace music or embrace, I don't want to say stenosis in a way, but because stenosis has always kind of been the same. It's just my drive towards different avenues of it have changed. So that's a hard bat to swing, You're trying to make money in something, and the music industry is going down, and in a future slog, I'll talk about my philosophy as to why the music industry, or one of the reasons why I believe the music industry is going down. And it's difficult, doing a career that you've put your life into, and not only one that you've put your life into, but one that encompasses your brain. I have a phenomenon in my head that's called synesthesia, and I'll talk about that in a future SlogCast. But in short, it's where I relate music to colors. Some people, there's different forms of it, and some people who hear numbers taste different things. But for me, whenever I listen or if I hear music, then my brain represents it to colors. That's how I learned how to play all the instruments I know how to play. That's my general approach to music. I cannot read music, and I've never had formal lessons as far as any of that goes. I've taught myself everything. And whenever something encompasses my brain so much like music, and I approach it as a business, and I become to enjoy it less and less as the way I used to, lately that's been what I've been reflecting on. And I've been thinking of what can I do to change that? What can I do to make Stenosis more successful and get back to my roots of Stenosis? And it's a hard question to answer, because I don't make a lot of money doing Stenosis. I actually make extremely little money. I'll put it in this way, that the money I have made, we'll just say every month. So the money I make every month in like royalties or payments from streaming services and whatnot is the equivalent, and also YouTube. I've never been paid by YouTube, so that doesn't even factor in. My total revenue on YouTube says is like $56, and ever since I've started YouTube, I've equated $56 in ad revenue, and you have to earn up to 100 before they pay out. So I've never been paid by YouTube. So all the other, like what I actually do get paid every month is the equivalent of some of y'all's like hour or 2 hours of wages. Some months I'll make, like, as far as royalties go, I make like $12 a month. And I have a couple Patreon supporters, which I am extremely appreciative for. And if you want to support me on Patreon, there's a link to it on my website, and you can find it in the description if you're listening to this on YouTube. And I'm extremely appreciative of the people who support me on Patreon. That means the world to me. And I will do a future SlogCast where I go more in depth on what Patreon means to me and my approach to it, because I am very new to a lot of things with technology. Well, I don't want to say technology, but like being a musician, you have to do so much shit by yourself that it's extremely hard. And I had to teach myself how to like code a website, and I had to teach myself Patreon, which I still don't really know how Patreon works. So, I still learn about that. But in short, to kind of wrap this extremely elongated SlogCast up, which it might not have made any sense. I don't know. Hopefully it did. But the more I think about Stenosis as a business, the less I enjoy it. And I don't want it to ever get to the point where I dislike Stenosis to the point where I dislike music. The person who sent me their music and asked me for my opinion on what they could do to improve it, they told me what they were looking for, and I told them I listened to that song probably 20 times because it reminded me of where I was whenever I was writing Scream Therapy. It reminded me of that mental stance, that mental place of creation, of loving to create. And if I can sum up what I want out of life, it's to create. And I found that I enjoy creating through Stenosis less the further I get into trying to maximize its business potential. So I don't know if that equates to backing away from the business side of Stenosis and just returning to it with the mindset of a hobby, or what, because I've never been approached by a record label and to sign for Stenosis. I've not been approached by brands who want to partner with me. And after a while, it makes you think, well, is the stuff that I'm creating not good enough for any of that? It makes you wonder. And it's a fair question. I would love to talk with a record label. I really would. And to some people, they say, oh, well, you wouldn't be indie, so then that you just sell out. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying I would sign any record deal. I would love to talk with a company that I could work with to create something better and more advanced and grow more for the people who support Stenosis. My goal my goal all along has been to grow for the people who support Stenosis and for myself. Because, like I said, music is everything in my mind. Everything. If I'm in my truck and I'm driving somewhere, I'm listening to music. If I'm doing anything, if I'm sitting here coding my website, I'm listening to music. I'm always listening to music in everything that I do. What I want to get back to is the love and fulfillment of creating music and creating content in Stenosis. Doing it for the reasons that fulfill me and not doing it for the reasons that I hope will, in some way, shape, or form fulfill some sort of financial opportunity or something like that. I want to simplify things because I think that's what's necessary in order for Stenosis to continue into the future. I want to, this SlogCast, it's a way of me simplifying things. And with SlogCast, I do struggle as far as what do I want to talk about, because I don't really think of myself as that interesting. So if I just sit here and talk about a topic, it's hard to get the topic going. But as you can obviously tell with this SlogCast, as I get into a topic, I can just talk the ears off a rock. So that it's getting over that initial hump. And I watched an interview with Casey Neistat who referenced it perfectly. He said that if you point a microphone at somebody and you say something interesting, they'll freeze up because they don't know what to say. But if you point a microphone at somebody and you say, what do you think about X? Then they do have a lot of interesting things to say. Lots of interesting stuffs. They have a lot of interesting things to say. So it's that initial prompt, and part of that whole mindset of thinking of Stenosis as a business has hindered the videos that I create in trying to think of SlogCast topics, because I would think more along the lines of what are people going to enjoy listening to, and less along the lines of, what do I just want to talk about? What I just want to, grab a microphone and just talk about. Today, I wrapped cables, and I didn't wrap cables today, but it's just an example. It's far less casual and far more business, and in a return of that, it's far less enjoyable and far more uncomfortable. And I want to change that. I really do. I want to get to the point that the mindset that I had during Scream Therapy, where I embraced the artistic creation of what I was doing, and I grew with that rather than trying to somehow form a business model around an art, because I love creating, and that's why I've been thinking more, about photography and wanting to get into photography and cinematography and stuff like that, because I love creating, and my interest in that stuff, I am certain does play in some part a role in my feeding from my frustration as far as music goes, or the music industry, or not growing, or not being financially stable in any way, shape, or form. Wanting to get into photography helps me be creative in a different world where I don't have to think about a business thing. So it's a lot of internal reflection. It's a lot of thought. It's a lot of figuring out where to go. And I think that's the question we all ask ourselves every day. Where do we go from here? What do we have? What do we want? And how do we get from A to C and not fall off the cliff when going to B? And, you never have it figured out. I'll never have it figured out. I'd love to talk with record labels or brands who want to work together, but that day may never come, and it's a hard pill to swallow. It's a hard pill to swallow whenever you think about the only thing you've ever wanted to do may not be the thing that's done. And then, then you ask yourself, well, at what scale should that be? And I don't know. The future will tell in one way, shape, or form. But I know that I need to get more closer to being comfortable in creating with Stenosis rather than being uncomfortable and pushing forward for business purposes, because that's not gotten me anywhere. And if it had gotten me anywhere, I don't know if I would have enjoyed that either, because I want to do it for the right reasons. I want to be who I am for the right reasons. I think that's a good point to leave it on. Please subscribe to the SlogCast on the website at stenosismusic.net. And also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I really appreciate everybody who stops by and listens and enjoys the content that I produce. I truly appreciate every one of you, and the people who send me messages or talk to me in the Facebook group, which you can also find. I post little snippets of me playing guitar and stuff on Instagram, so find me there at Stenosis Music. And feel free to contact me at some point if you don't think that talking to me will ultimately lead you to not enjoy the work that I create. But thank you very much. I have the Stenosis on the Stenosis website. It's wintertime, it's cold, so pick you up one of those if you want. And you can help support everything that I do here, and you can wear it around and be warm, and it'll give us both the warm fuzzies. It's pretty cool. But thank you very much for being here. I hope to see you next time. Actually, I won't see you next time, but you'll hear me. I'm Stenosis, the mask behind the face. And I'll talk to you later. Yeah.